Lebanon, a country that has had an eventful 20 months. Financial issues that many blame on the political system of the country have led to inflation, causing many families access to necessary food staples and resources to become scarce. In October of 1989, Lebanon's warring parties of the civil war at the time met in the Saudi mountain town of Ta'if, signing a deal that stopped the fighting, which had killed more than 100,000 people and left much of the country in ruins. The signing of the deal, or the Ta'if Accords, reinstituted a sectarian power-sharing system that was conceived under Ottoman rule. The Ta'if Accords promised Lebanon's warring sects a division of influence and power-sharing in return for laying down their arms. Widespread dissatisfaction with the regime in Lebanon is not new. However, beginning with the WhatsApp tax in October of 2019, many university-aged students and youth have decided that enough is enough and have spearheaded the revolution, or Thawra. This political and social movement was catalyzed when the government placed a tax on certain social media communication platforms, taxing its citizens on one of the only affordable methods of communication in the country, as SMS services became far too expensive. Protests erupted across the country, growing with the momentum of this new Thawra. The effects of Lebanon's sectarian system on the Lebanese economy is illustrated through an interview of Lebanese political activist Asad Thabian, conducted by the Journal of International Affairs. In the interview, Thabian states, "We're talking about huge inequality. We're talking about 0.68% of the depositors owning around 50% of the amount of deposits. We're talking about fewer than 500 families owning 2/3 of the economy." Having experienced this economic effect, and coupled with a global pandemic and the third largest recorded explosion in modern human history, Lebanese citizens are suffering. The government's poor handling of the protests, explosion cleanup, and pandemic restrictions have pushed Lebanese citizens to the brink, demanding a new political system in place that would actually provide for its people. What does this have to do with youth, anthropology, and social media? The Thawra has thrown many youth into activism across the country. Much of this activism takes place through transnational, non-tangible spaces formed through social media. These spaces allow for the spreading of information and establish communication platforms for activists around the world. The spaces give route to political imagination, which is imaginative thinking with a political aim, given a person's unique human experience and background. But what does political imagination look like for these youth? I had the pleasure of interviewing different Lebanese youth political activists, as the youth in Lebanon are known to frontline the movement. According to the Arab Youth Survey, 82% of young Lebanese support the protests that call for the end of sectarianism in their country. There are many different reasons why the Thawra has found youth at its front lines, and Lebanese political activist and economics student at the University of California, Los Angeles, Malik Saadi, believes that social media proficiency and utilization is key to this shift.
The older generation, they lived through civil war, they have a lot more trauma due to the country, due to the warlords. They're more scared to speak out. They're more tied, they know these warlords maybe personally.
This rhetoric of Lebanese youth being the X factors of change is common amongst different activists. Noor Jiha, student at the American University of Beirut and Lebanese activist, also agrees that youth are at the forefront of the revolution.
And the second thing is that the new generation, you can see a change in the new generation. Because the old generation, I told you, it's hard to change their mindset, especially that they lived the civil war and they believe that they need someone to protect them, especially because like they're afraid of it happening again. But us as the new generation who did not live the civil war and who has seen and has lived an era of development and technology and has been more exposed to the world, we have a broader knowledge, and we know that we deserve better. And this revolution did actually change the mentality of a lot of people our age, and I do believe that this was a crucial step to changing Lebanon, if not now, then hopefully after these bastards die.
The Thawra demonstrated 3 themes in anthropology that help us understand the social and political movement in Lebanon, and the significance of youth and their use of social media. The 3 themes are agency, social media and shared community space, and political imagination. Agency is an action to achieve a goal. Social media is a platform for a community space that allows ideas and information to be created and shared. Political imagination allows there to be a change in political system. A problem was identified, and youth are trying their best to make change possible. So how are these Lebanese youth agents? And how do they use community space to allow for political imagination? Noor Jihad describes a time when she realized some of her friends were using the popular social media site, Instagram, to post pictures of each other on fun, leisurely trips. When seeing this, Noor explains the attitude of agents and activists towards this behavior.
At a certain point, my Instagram feed was nothing but Lebanon. Nothing. Nothing. And like imagine someone posted any picture of themselves, like, you know, any cute picture someone would like to post on their Instagram and stuff.
Yep.
We'd all be like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you posting a picture like that? Like, we're in the middle of a revolution and you're just posting a picture of yourself, like, remove it. You know?
Yeah.
We would have that mindset.
Noor is an agent. She's being an actor in her own life and community and making a change. She hopes to use social media for the cause of the Thawra, and prefers not to use that available marketing space for other types of pictures that can take away from the awareness the Thawra posts create. Noor is telling those youth around her that you need to be an agent, using your agency in a particular kind of way. In this case, to bring social and political change to Lebanon. This activism and agency creates an intangible shared space that provides a political temporality despite geographic location. An example of this is Nadim Afyouni, a Lebanese citizen and Beirut resident who also attends New York University. Nadim says he uses social media to set up protests thousands of miles away from Lebanon. He uses them to spread the word and engage in agency. Nadim also talks about the importance of youth involvement in the Thawra. He says, "This movement is definitely pushed by the youth. The youth use social media and spread the word. They organize, they push. The future of Lebanon is in the hands of the future of Lebanon." On organizing protests, he goes on to say, "When I cannot go out and protest in the streets of Beirut, I organize and spread the word here." The shared community space allows the spread of the message of the Thawra. This space means there has to be a resistance, or an other. In order for the space to be created, there must be an opposition or other group that makes it necessary for these people to form and foster political imagination. Social media, this shared transnational space, creates area for political imagination. The use of social media in the Arab Spring has allowed political change to take place in countries at an incredibly faster rate than history illustrates. Social media as a catalyst, both for its ease of spreading information and its creation of a transnational space for social movement, is essential in researching Lebanese youth activism in this current era of technological modernity. In a paper published by Yarimar Bonilla and Jonathan Rosa, the authors mention #activism and how digital activism may be seen as a poor substitute for real activism. The authors argue that digital activism is key and give an example of its role during the protests over the fatal shooting of teenager Michael Brown by law enforcement officers in Ferguson, Missouri. The authors state, "It is important to examine how and why digital activism has become salient to particular populations. It is surely not coincidental that the groups most likely to experience police brutality, to have their protests disparaged as acts of rioting or looting, and to be misrepresented in the media are precisely those turning to digital activism at the highest rates. Indeed, some of the most important campaigns emerging out of Ferguson were targeted at calling attention to both police practices and media representations, suggesting that social media can serve as an important role for challenging these various forms of racial profiling." Because of this othering created by the Thawra between the corrupt regime and its people, we see the importance of this shared space through social media. The other oppresses and hinders the agency of those oppressed, and this social media creates an avenue where political imagination may thrive. This is also evident in Noor's quote of posting irrelevant content on social media. The other is the individual which uses the platform for their own life and leisurely meanings, as opposed to using their agency in the fight of the Thawra. The importance of social media is also evident in a few examples. Gino Rady is a 30-year-old activist who was exiled from Lebanon for refusing to sign a paper for the government stating he would stop shutting down roads in Beirut for protests. He currently resides in New York City, where he continues his activism through his verified Instagram page with over 100,000 followers. Gino posts on Instagram almost daily and has his own online blog where he posts current events occurring in Lebanon. Gino's Instagram page was comprised mainly of satirical cartoons mocking the Lebanese regime, as well as posts filled with statistics and factual content to educate others about the Thawra. In 2016, a member of the Lebanese parliament voted for national raunchy pop star Miriam Klink, causing the vote to be redone.
Miriam Klink.
بلد مقسوم بأخبار السياسة زعماء وأحزاب بيزيدوا المقاس.
The extra vote meant neither candidate held majority in parliament. Although seemingly comical by the laughs drawn from other members of parliament, the incident did not amuse many of Lebanese citizens. Social media activist Gino posted to his blog, "I think those joke votes, though, were justified. And honestly, I wish more members of parliament did that, and for several reasons." Gino continues to say this is the respect the election deserved. He calls the election a mockery and uses the Miriam Klink write-in to criticize the current political administration. That kind of parliament with this kind of MPs deserves as much respect and seriousness as one of Miriam Klink's photo shoots and TV appearances. Heck, Klink deserves more respect for sticking to her positions and not flip-flopping as much as Aoun and the rest of his 126 colleagues. More so because despite all the sexist vitriol directed at her, she pays no heed and does what she wants and has garnered a fan base as loyal to her as her detractors are committed to shaming and bringing her down. However, Klink isn't the issue here. It's the MP who wrote in her name. I support that decision and think it was a brilliant way to highlight several issues with this pre-approved election theatrical piece. Social media, agency, shared community spaces, and political imagination are all working hand in hand in Lebanon to drive political and social change within the country. Youth are at the foregrounds of this movement, using their expertise of social media to create transnational spaces for agency and activism, in hopes of destroying the political system that was set up before they were born. The roots of colonialism driven from the established sectarian political system are evident through the country's political and economic failings, and are being fought through political imagination led by youth. In the past, older generations have been wary and scared of the political powers in place, and have been unable and unsuccessful in revolution. Today, youth's use of social media shows a promising path for their journey of agency and for a better future for Lebanon.